Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Word of the Day podcast, coming to you pre-recorded from the RAV4 studios. I am your host, Jamie Silva, and before we get into today's word, I want to answer what seems to be a common listener question, especially among those just getting acquainted with the show. Why, they ask, isn't there a new word, a new episode every day, since the show is called, after all, the Word of the Day? This is a fair question, and I would respond by saying that each word is just the word of whatever day I post it on. It is the word of that day. But that doesn't mean every day has to have its own word. This is similar to how, as the saying goes, every dog has its day. But that doesn't mean every day comes with its own dog, unless you're talking about a dog-a-day pull-off calendar, which is definitely something you can buy. The 2017 edition on calendars.com, which is marketed as America's favorite dog calendar, is currently on sale for 40% off, which I am compelled to warn you is not a very good deal because we are already more than 40% of the way into the year. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, episode frequency. I hope this explanation clears up why it is okay to make a Word of the Day podcast that doesn't go up every day, or even better, confuses people enough to where they stop asking. And it's good that I'm addressing this now because, as it turns out, the episodes will probably get a little less frequent from now on. The staff was just stretched to the breaking point by the goal of posting an episode at least twice a week, and in spite of all of my urgings and exhortations, they insisted on a slightly less aggressive schedule of roughly once a week. But again, we will not be renaming it the Word of the Week podcast. Certainly not. All of our branded merchandise would be obsolete, and we don't want to have to buy any more. Okay, enough housekeeping. It is time to get acquainted with today's word, which is an adjective, perfunctory. I am especially excited about this word because it scores very highly in the three categories we care most about around here. It is fun to say, you don't hear it very often, and it's extremely useful. In my opinion, this word perfunctory refers to things people do quickly and without much thought, probably because they are obligated to do those things, but not at all enthusiastic about it. Now, if you Googled perfunctory, you would see the following definition, quote, of an action or gesture carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection, unquote. So basically the same as mine, but it does add the idea of gestures in addition to actions, which is a small upgrade, and we'll talk about that later. Now it's time for usage. I want you to think of everything you do during the day. Now, as Calvin says of Calvin and Hobbes fame, I don't think you should have to do anything unless you're enthusiastic about it. So ask yourself that question. How many of those things that you do are you truly excited? Are you enthusiastic about doing? I'm guessing not close to all of them, even if overall you're a very contented person. But just because you aren't enthusiastic about doing something doesn't mean you won't try super hard at it. Consider the task of husking corn. Objectively speaking, this is not a radically fun thing to do. The husks can be kind of tough to wrangle. You have to pull all the little hairs off the corn cob too, and sometimes, if the corn is organic enough, some little worms might have begun eating it, and you either have to take them out by hand or run away screaming while someone else takes them off by hand. The point is, I doubt many people straight up enjoy husking corn. But you still want to do a good job, because if you don't, dinner time will be marred by people picking corn silk out of their teeth. So you probably do your best, you pay attention, and you don't cut corners. The problem comes when you both don't enjoy doing something and you don't really care whether you do a good job. In this case, you're likely to do it in a perfunctory fashion, or to use the adverb, to do it perfunctorily, with little effort or concentration. You're doing it because it must be done, but you're more or less just going through the motions. Stereotypically, as an example, children who are asked to do chores they dislike will find a way to do them technically, but not actually, not carefully or completely. You know, maybe this means sweeping around the edges of the table, but not moving the chairs to get underneath the table, or kind of rinsing a dish real quick in a soap-optional sort of way. In these cases, they can be accused of making only a perfunctory effort to clean up. This indifferent attitude can apply to way more than chores, of course. Social obligations, conversation, going to the gym, texting acquaintances, Snapchatting, and on and on and on. It is said that anything worth doing is worth doing well. And the reverse of this idea might be that anything barely worth doing, you might as well do with a minimum of effort and attention. And that is what the word perfunctory is all about. Remember how the online definition referenced gestures as well as something that you can carry out perfunctorily? I don't think this just means like hand gestures that you might make while speaking. I think it more refers to stuff like shaking someone's hand or smiling or waving, or doing any other sort of physical form of communication. If you pass someone in the hallway and you're in a hurry but don't want to seem totally impolite, you might give them a perfunctory nod without ever slowing your stride. You have fulfilled the basic requirement of greeting them, but you haven't exerted yourself one bit, so good job. As another example, if someone asks for your opinion on something and you don't really want to be bothered to explain it, you could just give a perfunctory thumbs up or thumbs down without making eye contact. The list, once again, could go on. Really, it is difficult to imagine any gesture, any form of human communication that is not done in a perfunctory way by some people at some times. Here's another way to understand perfunctory. If we were to do a perfunctory episode of this podcast, we'd probably pick a dull word that was super easy to explain, like the word tired. And we'd just read a definition out of the dictionary and we'd say, oh, you can use this word whenever you feel tired. And it comes from a Latin word meaning tired. Example number 1, Bob felt tired. Example number 2, Sally also felt tired. And okay, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And then, we'd post the episode without doing the painstaking editing we always do. And we might even use recordings of the opening and closing music instead of having a live performance. And that would be it. Like the trappings of the show might be there. It would have all of the building blocks of an episode, but it would be clear to you, the listener, that we simply weren't trying. The etymology of perfunctory really echoes what we're talking about here. Unsurprisingly, there is a Latin word, perfunctorius, that meant careless and negligent, or literally, quote, like one who wishes to get through something, unquote. Precisely so. If you just want to get through something, get it over and done with, and there doesn't appear to be any immediate consequence to just doing the bare minimum, you would probably be tempted to do it perfunctorily, or in a perfunctory fashion. It's time now for the examples. Example number 1. It was a very cold day and the ice cream truck driver knew he wouldn't get any sales. But having nothing better to do, he took a few perfunctory laps around the neighborhood, wondering whether he should switch to selling piping hot clam chowder in the winter instead. Example number 2. Soon after arriving at the party, Melanie was overcome by a nagging feeling that she had left the stove on. Unable to think of anything but the possibility of her apartment burning to a crisp in her absence, she dished out some perfunctory how-do-you-dos to the other partygoers, complained of a headache, and rushed home. Example number 3. The cheerleaders did a few perfunctory leg kicks and pom-pom waves after the touchdown, but seeing as how the home team was still down 42 points with just half a quarter left to play, you could tell their hearts just weren't in it. Example number 4 comes from the short story A Wasted Day by an American writer named Richard Harding Davis. Quote, the banker was much given to charity, but it had always been perfunctory and extended only on the advice of his secretary. In helping here, however, he felt a genial glow of personal pleasure. Unquote. Okay, that is it for the examples, but before we go, I would like to toss in a quick, though not perfunctory edition of Conversation Etiquette from a dozen decades ago, in which we read from my time-worn copy of the book Manners, Culture, and Dress, published in 1890. This snippet is entitled Words of Salutation, which just means, greetings and hellos, how people say hi to each other. And I think this snippet is relevant here because there is perhaps nothing that people do more perfunctorily more often than say hello or otherwise exchange pleasantries. And if you're not sure what pleasantries means, by the way, might I recommend episode 11. We cover it there. Anyway, here is what refined people of the late 19th century had to say about greetings, about words of salutation. Quote, the most common forms of salutation are, how do you do? How are you? Good morning and good evening. The two latter forms, good morning and good evening, seem the most appropriate, as it is most absurd to ask after a person's health and not stop to receive the answer. Unquote. Well, this is awkward because nowadays, how are you as a greeting is pretty much only followed by, fine thanks, how are you? Practically no matter what is actually going on or how the person is feeling, especially if we're talking just, mere acquaintances or colleagues, something like that. It very seldom acts as an inquiry into someone's health, into how they really are. And if anyone did respond to, how are you, or how's it going with, all right, but I have a toothache and my face hurts real bad, that would probably fall into the too much information category pretty fast, depending once again, of course, on how well you know the person. I've always thought that some polling organization should take advantage of people's tendency to ask and answer such questions perfunctorily and use it to produce some really misleading survey results. Like this. Our research concludes that the vast majority of people are actually reasonably content, because in our 15,000-person poll, 72% of respondents to the question of how are you doing described themselves as doing fine/pretty well, thanks. Another 15% noted that they couldn't complain, and another 13% said they were hanging in there, which to us doesn't sound that bad. However, our poll also revealed that most Americans have very little to do, because when asked, what's up with you these days, nearly everyone replied, and we quote, oh, nothing much, how about you? Okay, I think that'll do it for this episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We hope you found the show unimaginably informative and superlatively entertaining, as is our goal. And if you want to get in touch with the show, please do so at wotdpodcast@gmail.com. Suggest a word, let us know how you used one, etc. And we've also got a Facebook page where we post neat little visuals to go with a lot of the shows, also a Twitter account. All of these social media links are available at our website, wotdpodcast.com. Check it out. Tell your friends you know the drill. This has been the Word of the Day podcast. I am Jamie Silva, and we'll see you next time.